Hello, my name is Vanessa, but you can call me V. And today we are reading Fangirl. We're gonna continue on with this book because it is a fun book. It's such a fun book. I love these characters and I love the writing in this book. So, I've been wanting to just even read it on my own, to be honest with you, but I'm not gonna do that because the only thing better than reading on my own is reading with you. So I'm gonna do that instead. Chapter 5. Please don't make me sit in the hall, Levi said. Kat stepped over his legs to get to her door. I have to study. Reagan's running late and I've already been sitting here half an hour. His voice dropped to a whisper. Your neighbor with the pink Ugg boots keeps coming out to talk to me. Have mercy. Kat frowned at him. I won't bother you, he said. I'll just wait quietly for Reagan. She rolled her eyes and walked in, leaving the door open behind her. I can see why you and Reagan hit it off. He got up to follow her. It can both be extremely brusque sometimes. We didn't hit it off. That's not what I heard. Hey, now that you're eating in the dining hall, can I eat your protein bars? You were already eating my protein bars, Kat said indignantly, sitting at her desk and opening her laptop. I felt bad about doing it behind your back. Good. But aren't you happier now? He said at the end of her bed and leaned against the wall, crossing his long legs at the ankles. You look better nourished already. Thank you? So? What? He grinned. Can I have a protein bar? You're unbelievable. Levi leaned over and reached under the bed. The blueberry bliss are my favorite. Kath actually was happier now. Not that she was going to admit that to Levi. So far, being Reagan's charity case didn't require much. Just going down to the dining hall together and helping Reagan ridicule everyone who walked by their table. Reagan liked to sit next to the kitchen door, right where the buffet line dumped into the dining room. She called it parade seating, and no one was spared. Look, she'd said last night. It's Gimpy. How do you think he broke his leg? Kat looked up at the guy, a dangerously hip-looking character with shaggy hair and oversized glasses. Probably tripped over his beard. Ha, Reagan said. His girlfriend is carrying his tray. Just look at her. That is one shiny unicorn. Do you think they actually met in an American Apparel ad? I'm pretty sure they met in New York City, but it took them 5 years to get here. Oh, Wolf Girl at 3 o'clock, Reagan said excitedly. Is she wearing her clip-on tail? I don't know. Wait for it? No. Damn. I kinda like her tail. Kat smiled fondly at the chubby girl with dyed black hair. If God put me into your life to keep you from wearing a fucking tail, Reagan said, I accept the assignment. Don't let Reagan shame you. If you want to wear a tail, you wear that tail. As far as Reagan was concerned, Kat was already problematically weird. It's bad enough that you have homemade slime and snow posters. Reagan had said last night while she was getting ready for bed. Do you have to have gay homemade Simon Snow posters? Kat had looked up at the drawing over her desk of Simon and Baz holding hands. Leave them alone, she said. They're in love. Pretty sure I don't remember that from the books. When I read them, Kat said, they're in love. What do you mean when you write them? Reagan stopped pulling her t-shirt down over her head. No, you know what? Never mind. I don't want to know. It's already hard enough to make eye contact with you. Levi was right. They must be hitting it off, because now when Reagan said stuff like that, it made Kath want to laugh. If Reagan missed dinner, Kath would go down to the dining hall anyway, and sit at their table. Then when Reagan came back to the room later, Kath would tell her everything she'd missed. Soccer Sandals finally talked to Venezuelan Lindsay Lohan, Kath would say. Thank God, Reagan would answer, flopping down onto her bed. The sexual tension was killing me. Kath wasn't sure where Reagan went on the nights when she didn't come back to the dorms. Maybe to Levi's. Kath looked over at Levi now. Still sitting on Kath's bed, eating what must be his second blueberry bliss bar. He was wearing black jeans and a black t-shirt. Maybe Levi worked at the Olive Garden too. Are you a waiter? She asked. Presently? No. Do you work at the Lancome counter? He laughed. What? I'm trying to figure out why you wear all black sometimes. Maybe I'm really gothy and dark, he smiled, but only on certain days. Kath couldn't imagine Levi ever being gothy and dark. He had the smilingest face she'd ever seen. He smiled all the way from his chin to his receding hairline. His forehead wrinkled up, his eyes twinkled, even his ears got into the action. They twitched, like a dog's. "Or maybe I work at Starbucks," he said. She snorted. "Really?" "Really," he said, still smiling. "Someday you'll need health insurance and you won't think working at Starbucks is funny." Levi and Reagan were always doing that to Kath, reminding her how young and naive she was. Reagan was only 2 years older than Kath. She wasn't even old enough to drink yet. Not legally. Not that it mattered on campus. There was booze everywhere. Ren already had a fake ID. "You can borrow it," she told Kath. "Say you got hair extensions." Kath wondered how old Levi was. He looked old enough to drink, but maybe that was just his hair. It's not that Levi was bald, or anywhere near bald, yet, but his hairline came to a peak on his forehead, then retreated dramatically above his temples. And instead of letting his hair hang down or forward to minimize it, or instead of giving up and wearing it really short like most guys would, Levi shoved it straight up and back in a sloppy blonde wave. And he was always messing with it, drawing even more attention to his wide-lined forehead. He was doing it now. "What are you working on?" he asked, pushing his fingers through his hair and scrubbing at the back of his head. "Studying in silence," she said. Kath had only posted 1 chapter of Carry On Simon this week, and it was half as long as usual. She usually posted something to her fanfics page every night, if not a full chapter, at least a blog entry. The comments on her page all week had been friendly. "How are you? Just checking in. Can't wait for the next post. Gah, I need my daily baths." But to Kath, they felt like demands. She used to read and respond to every comment on her stories. Comments were like gold stars, like Mayday bouquets, but ever since Carry On Simon took off last year, it all gotten too big for Kath to manage. She went from getting around 500 hits per chapter to 5,000, regularly. Then one of the heavies on the biggest fan site, Fixation, called Carry On the 8th year fic, and Kath's fanfics page got 35,000 hits in one day. She still tried to keep up with comments and questions as much as she could, but it wasn't the same anymore. She wasn't just writing for Ren and the friends they'd made in some old Snowflakes forums. It wasn't just a bunch of girls trading birthday fics and cheer up fics and cracked out "I wrote this to make you laugh" stories. Kath had an audience now, a following. All these people she didn't know who experienced things, who expected things from her, and questioned her decisions, sometimes even turned against her. They trashed her on other fan sites saying that Kath used to be good, but she'd lost the magic, that her path was too canon or not canon enough, that her Simon was a prude, and that she overrode Penelope. "You don't owe them anything," Ren would say, crawling onto Kath's bed at 3 in the morning and pulling Kath's laptop away. "Go to sleep." "I will, I want to finish this scene. I think Baz is finally going to tell Simon he loves him. He'll still love him tomorrow. It's a big chapter. It's always a big chapter. It's different this time. Kath had been saying this for the last year. It's the end." Ren was right. Kath had written the story. Baz and Simon in love dozens of times before. She'd written this scene, this line. "Snow? Simon? I love you. 50 different ways." But Carry On was different. It was the longest fic she'd written so far. It was already longer than any of Gemma T. Leslie's books, and Kath was only 2/3 of the way through. Carry On was written as if it were the 8th Simon Snow book, as if it were Kath's job to wrap up all the loose ends, to make sure that Simon ascended to mage, to redeem Baz, something GTL would never do, to make both boys forget about Agatha, to write all the goodbye scenes and the graduation scenes and last-minute revelations, and to stage the final battle between Simon and the insidious humdrum. Everyone in fandom was writing 8th year fics right now. Everyone wanted to take a crack at the big ending before the last Simon Snow book was released in May. But for thousands of people, Carry On was already it. People were always telling Kath that they couldn't look at canon the same way after reading her stuff. Why does Gemma hate Baz? Somebody had even started selling t-shirts on Etsy that said, "Keep calm and carry on," with a photo of Baz and Simon glaring at each other. Ren bought Kath one for her 18th birthday. Kath tried not to let it all go to her head. "These characters belong to Gemma T. Leslie," she wrote at the beginning of every new chapter. "You belong to Gemma," she'd say to the Baz poster over her bed at home. "I'm just borrowing you." "You didn't borrow Baz," Ren would say. "You kidnapped him and raised him as your own." If Kath stayed up too late writing, too many nights in a row, if she was obsessing over the comments or the criticism, Rin would climb into Kath's bed and steal her laptop, holding it like a teddy bear while she slept. On nights like that, Kath could always go downstairs and keep writing on her dad's computer if she really wanted to, but she didn't like to cross Ren. They listened to each other when they wouldn't listen to anyone else. Hey guys, Kath started typing now into her fanfics journal. She wished Ren would hear to read this before she posted it. So I guess it's time for me to admit that college is hard. College is hard, or at least time-consuming, and I'm probably not going to be updating Carry On as much as I used to, as much as I'd like to. But I'm not disappearing, I promise, and I'm not giving it up. I already know how this all ends, and I'm not going to rest till I get there. Nick turned around in his desk as soon as class was dismissed. You'll be my partner, right? Right, Kath said, noticing a girl in the next aisle glance at them disappointedly, probably because she wanted to work with Nick. They were each supposed to find a partner and write a story together outside of class, reading paragraphs back and forth. The point of the exercise, Professor Piper said, was to make them extra conscious of plot and voice, and to lead their brains down pathways they'd never find on their own. Nick wanted to meet on campus at Love Library. That was the actual name. Thank you for your donation, Mary Dawn Lothrop Love. Nick worked there a few nights a week, shelving books down in the stacks. Reagan looked suspicious when Kath started packing up her laptop after dinner. You're leaving the dorm after dark? Do you have a date? She said it like it was a joke. The idea of Kath on a date. I'm needing someone to study. Don't walk home by yourself if it's late, Levi said. He and Reagan had class notes spread all over Reagan's side of the room. I walk home by myself all the time. Reagan snapped at him. That's different. Levi smiled at her warmly. You don't rock that Little Red Riding Hood vibe. You're scary. Reagan grinned like the big bad wolf. I don't think rapists actually care about self-confidence, Kath said. You don't? Levi looked over at her seriously. I think they'd go for easy prey, the young and the lame. Reagan snorted. Kath hung her scarf on her neck. I'm not lame, she mumbled. Levi heaved himself up off Reagan's bed and slid into a heavy green canvas jacket. Come on, he said. Why? I'm walking you to the library. You don't have to, Kath argued. I haven't moved in 2 hours. I don't mind. No, really. Just go, Kath, Reagan said. It'll take 5 minutes, and if you get raped now, it'll be our fault. I haven't got time for the pain. You coming? Levi asked Reagan. Fuck no, it's cold out. It was cold out. Kath walked as quietly as she could, but Levi, as long as his legs were, never broke an amble. He was trying to talk to Kath about Buffalo. As far as she could tell, Levi had a whole class that was just about Buffalo. He seemed like he'd major in Buffalo if that were an option. Maybe it was an option. This girl was constantly reminding Kath how rural Nebraska was, something she'd never given any thought to before growing up in Omaha, the state's only real city. Kath had driven through Nebraska a few times on the way to Colorado. She'd seen the grass and the cornfields, but she never thought much past the view. She never thought about the people who lived there. Levi and Reagan were from some town called Arnold, which Reagan said smelled and looked like manure. God's country, Levi called it. All the gods. Brahma and Odin would love it there. Levi was still talking about Buffalo even though they were already at the library. Kath climbed the first stone step, hopping up and down to stay warm. Standing on the step, she was practically as tall as him. Do you see what I mean? He asked. She nodded. Cows bad, buffalo good. Cows good, he said. Bison better. Then he gave her a lazy, lopsided grin. This is all really important, you know. That's why I'm telling you. Vital, she said. Ecosystems, water tables. She was going extinct. Call me when you're done, Little Red. No, Kath thought. I don't even know your number. Levi was already walking away. I'll be in your room, he said over his shoulder. Call me there. The library had little. This is an interesting part, I think. She writes like you would think. And this may sound weird, but how do I explain it? But usually it's like usually authors focus more on like storytelling and like don't really like drift off right in tangents based on the previous thoughts. and that's how she writes, and it's very much how people tend to think, I think, right? Certainly how I think. So it's refreshing. I like it. The library had 6 levels above ground and 2 levels below. The sub-levels, where the stacks were shaped strangely and accessible only from certain staircases. It almost felt like the stacks were tucked under other buildings around campus. Nick worked in the north stacks in a long white room. It was practically a missile silo with bookshelves. There was a constant hum no matter where you were standing, and even though Kath couldn't see any vents, parts of the room had their own wind. At the table where they were sitting, Nick had to set a pen on his open notebook to keep the pages from rifling? Nick wrote in longhand. Kath was trying to convince him. Is longhand cursive? Sorry. Kath was trying to convince him that they'd be better off taking turns on her laptop. But then we won't see ourselves switching, he said. We won't see the 2 different hands at work. I can't think on paper, she said. Perfect, Nick said. This exercise is about stepping outside of yourself. Okay, she sighed. There was no use arguing anymore. He'd already pushed her computer away. Okay. Nick pushed up his pen and pulled the cap off with his teeth. I'll start. Wait, Kat said. Let's talk about what kind of story we're writing. You'll see. That's not fair, she leaned forward, looking at the blank sheet of paper. I don't want to write about, dead bodies or naked bodies. So what I'm hearing is no bodies. Nick wrote in a scrawling half-cursive. He was left-handed, so he smeared blue ink across the paper as he went. You need a felt tip, Kath thought, trying to read his handwriting upside down from across the table. When he handed her the notebook, she could hardly read it, even right side up. What's this word? She asked, pointing. Retinas. She's standing in a parking lot, and she's standing under a streetlight, and her hair's so blonde it's flashing at you. It's burning out your retinas one fucking cone at a time. She leans forward and grabs her t-shirt, and she's standing on tiptoe now. She's reaching for you. She smells like black tea and American spirits, and when her mouth hits your ear, you wonder if she remembers your name. That is so cringy. So, Kat said, we're doing this in present tense. Second person, I confirmed. Kath frowned at him. What's wrong? He asked. You don't like love stories? Kath could feel herself blushing and tried to stop. Stay cool, Little Red. She hunched over her back to look for a pen. It was hard for her to write without typing, and hard to write with Nick watching her like he just handed her a hot potato. Please don't tell Mom, she giggles. Which part should I leave out? You ask her. The hair or the stupid hipster cigarettes? She pulls meanly at your t-shirt and you shove her back like she's 12. And she practically is. She's so young and you're so tired. And what is Dave going to think if you walk out on your first date to take care of your stupidly blonde little sister? You suck, Nick, she says. And she's reeling. She's swaying again under the streetlight. Kat turned the notebook around and pushed it back at Nick. He poked his tongue in his cheek and smiled. So our narrator is gay, he said, and he's named after me. I love stories, Kat said. Nick nodded his head a few more times, and then they both started laughing. It was almost like writing with Ren, back when she and Ren would sit in front of the computer, pulling the keyboard back and forth and reading out loud as the other person typed. Kath always wrote most of the dialogue. Ren was better at plot and mood. Sometimes Kath would write all the conversations and Red would write behind her, deciding where Baz and Simon were and where they were going. Once, Kath had written what she thought was a love scene, and Ren had turned it into a fight sword. Even after they'd stopped writing together, Kath would still follow Ren around the house begging for help, whenever she couldn't get Simon and Baz to do anything but talk. Nick wasn't Ren. He was bossier and more of a showboat, and also, obviously, a boy. Up close, his eyes were bluer and his eyebrows were practically sentient. He licked his lips when he wrote, tapping his tongue on his front teeth. To his credit, he got over the gay thing pretty much immediately, even when Kath gave gay fictional Nick heavy black eyebrows and periwinkle blue wingtips. Non-fiction Nick had trouble taking turns. He'd start to take the notebook out of Kat's hands before she was done writing, and her green pen would pull across the page. "Wait," she'd say. "No, I have an idea and you're about to ruin it." She tried hard to make her paragraphs sound like Nick's, but her own style kept leaking through. It was cool when she realized he was imitating her too. After a few hours, Kath was yawning, and their story was twice as long as it needed to be. "This is gonna take forever to type up," she said. "Don't type it up then. We'll turn it in like this." Kath looked down at the green and blue smudged pages. "It's her only copy. So don't let your dog eat it." He zipped up a gray hoodie and reached for his ruddy denim jacket. "It's midnight. I have to clock out." The book cart next to their table was still heaved with books. "What about these?" Kath asked. "The morning girl can do it. It'll remind her that she's alive." Kath carefully tore their story out of Nick's notebook and tucked it into her backpack, then followed him up the winding staircase. They didn't see anyone else on their way to the first floor. It was different being with him now. Different even from a few hours ago. Fun. Kat didn't feel like her real self was buried under 8 layers of fear and diagnosable anxiety. Nick walked right next to her on the stairs, and they talked like they were still passing the notebook between them. When they got outside, they stopped at the sidewalk. Kat felt some of her nervousness creeping back. She fumbled with the buttons of her coat. "All right," Nick said, putting his arms through his backpack. "See you in class?" "Yeah," Kat said. "I'll try not to lose our novel." "Our first novel," he said, taking the path that led off campus. "Good night." "Good night." She watched him go, all dark hair and blue smudges in the moonlight. And then it was just Kath out on the quad. Kath and about 100 trees that she never noticed during the daytime. The library light switched off behind her. Her shadow disappeared. Kath sighed and got out her phone. She had 2 texts from Abel. She ignored them, then dialed her room, hoping her roommate wasn't asleep. "Hello?" Reagan answered on the 3rd ring. There was music in the background. "It's Kath." "Well, hello, Kath. How was your date?" "It wasn't. Look, I'm just gonna walk home. I'll be fast. I'm already walking." Levi left as soon as the phone rang. You might as well wait for him. "He doesn't have to. It'll be a bigger hassle if he can't find you." "Okay," Kath said, giving in. "Thanks, I guess." Reagan hung up. Kath stood next to a lamppost so he'd see her, and tried to look like the huntsman, not the little girl with the basket. Levi showed up long before she expected him to, jogging down the pathway. Even his jogging looked laid back. She started walking toward him, thinking she'd save him at least a few steps. "Catherine," he said, stopping when they met and turning to walk with her. "In one piece, even." "That," she said, "isn't even my name." "Just Cather, huh?" "Just Kath." "Did you get lost in the library?" "No. I always get lost in the library," he said, "no matter how many times I go. In fact, I think I get lost there more the more that I go. Like, it's getting to know me and revealing new passages." "You spend a lot of time in the library?" "I do, actually." "How is that possible when you're always in my room?" "Where do you think I sleep?" he asked. And when she looked at him, he was grinning. Simon curled on his bed like a wounded unicorn fowl, holding the torn piece of green velvet to his tear-stained face. "Are you okay?" Basil asked. You could tell he didn't want to ask. You could tell he found it quite distasteful to speak to his longtime enemy. "Leave me alone," Simon spat, choking on his tears and hating Basil even more than usual. "She was my mother." Basil frowned. He narrowed his smoky gray eyes and folded his arms, like he was forcing himself to keep standing there, like what he really wanted to do was throw another sneezing spell at Simon. "I know," Basil said almost angrily. "I know what you're going through. I lost my mother too." Simon wiped his snotty nose on the sleeve of his jacket and slowly sat up, his eyes as wide and blue as the 8th sea. Was Basil lying? That would be just like him, the prat. From Friends for Life and After, posted August 2006 by fanfics.net authors Magic Hat and Renegade. Okay, so listen, maybe I lied. I know I said I was gonna do 5 and 6, but my phone is close to dying because I recorded a chapter previously of Twilight. So we're just gonna go ahead and leave it here. I love cats. What an interesting character.